The Sunshine 60 building, located in the Ikebukuro district of Tokyo, was, for a brief time, the tallest building in Asia back in the 1980s. It also has a reputation as being the most haunted skyscraper in Asia as well. This reputation probably stems from the long and dark history that is connected to the physical site where the building is located. This is Kevin O'Shea, and welcome to the Supernatural Japan podcast. In each episode of this podcast, I bring you the supernatural, strange, quirky, and historical elements of Japan you might not hear about anywhere else. In this episode of the Supernatural Japan podcast, we are going to take a look at the Sunshine 60 building, one of Tokyo's most iconic landmarks and one of Tokyo's most haunted places. Let's start with a little bit about the area the Sunshine 60 building is located. Now, this information comes from TripAdvisor, all about the neighborhood of Ikebukuro. Ikebukuro is an area of massive development. Several thousand tenants occupy two giant department stores and shopping malls where all sorts of shopping and gourmet foods can be enjoyed. The 60-story building at the east entrance of the station, Sunshine City, is a landmark within Ikebukuro and features an aquarium, planetarium, theme park, as well as an observation platform. The popular name for the western side of this area is Otome Road, or Maiden Road, and there are many shops selling products related to anime with a female theme, and it has rapidly become the worldwide headquarters for otaku, or geek culture. Now, in 1978, when it was built, it was the highest building in Asia, and it was surpassed in 1985, but for a while remained the tallest in the city. The building's foundation is made of reinforced concrete, and the lower segment of the building is reinforced concrete with a steel skeleton. It's home to an aquarium, planetarium, theater, museum, shopping center, restaurants, as well as an event hall. And the observation deck on the 60th floor of the Sunshine 60 building offers an incredible view of the surrounding city. Now, let's take a look at the history of the area where the building is located. According to the book Yurei Attack by Hiroko Yoda and Matt Alt, in 1721, Ikebukuro is, at this time, a sleepy suburb of mansions, temples, and farms. A mysterious individual or individuals begin ambushing passers-by in a series of incidents euphemistically described as tsurikiri, or sword testing. They claim some 64 victims in total, at one point killing 17 in a single night, and the perpetrator is never identified. Haunted buildings tend to be constructed on pieces of real estate that have a dark past. Now, in more modern times, the piece of land that the Sunshine 60 building is located on was home to Sugamo Prison. Now, this information comes from Wikipedia. Sugamo Prison was a prison in Tokyo, Japan. It was located in the district of Ikebukuro, which is now part of Toshima Ward in Tokyo, Japan. Sugamo Prison was originally built in 1895 using the prisons of Europe as a model. By the 1930s, it became known for housing political prisoners, including many communists and other dissenters who fell foul of the peace preservation laws in the 1930s and 1940s. Allied spies were also incarcerated there, including Richard Sorge, who was a well-known German who was spying for the Soviets. He was hanged in the prison on November 7, 1944. The prison was also used to hold captured Allied officers during World War II, as well as airmen. The prison was not damaged during the bombing of Tokyo in World War II, and was taken over by the Allied occupation forces during the occupation of Japan to house suspected war criminals as they awaited trial before the International Military Tribunal for the Far East. After the conclusion of the trials, Sugamo Prison was used to incarcerate some of the convicted and was the site of execution of 7 inmates sentenced to death by hanging on December 23, 1948. The prison was also the execution site for 51 Japanese war criminals who were condemned in the Yokohama war crimes trials. The last 7 executions were carried out on April 7th, 1950. The original compound was only 2.43 hectares, or 6 acres in size. The construction of exterior fencing expanded the facility to double the original size. After being captured and repurposed by the Allied forces, the facility was operated by the United States 8th Army. Under the U.S. occupation, Sugamo Prison was administered by 400 to 500 soldiers. There were approximately 2,500 military personnel assigned to duty in the prison, however, no more than 500 at any given time. The prison was operated by occupation authorities from December 1945 through May 1952, and the structure housed some 2,000 Japanese war criminals during its operation. By all accounts, the Sunshine 60 building is a normal office building and shopping area. There's simply nothing out of the ordinary about it, but at night, it's supposed to be different. Again, from the book Yurei Attack by Hiroko Yoda and Matt Alt, witnesses have reported all sorts of odd phenomena in and around the building after hours, and these include phantom footsteps echoing through the halls, inexplicable music issuing from empty stages in orchestral areas, mysterious reflections of human faces in the glass doors and windows of the entrance area, ostensibly of those ones in prison there. But the most famous incident took place on August 8, 1979, the 39th anniversary of the end of World War II, when a trio of high school students spotted mysterious fireballs hovering over the building that night. Like the will-o-wisp and foxfire of European folklore, lights of this sort have long been associated with ghostly phenomena in Japan. When reports of the incident appeared in newspapers the next day, many other locals stepped forward to claim similar sightings. Now, according to one blog I came across, and you'll have to bear with me, the English isn't the best, so I will try to do my best to improve on the fly. The current location of a stone monument in the Higashi Ikebukuro Park next to the Sunshine Building used to be the gallows of Sugamo Prison. This monument was erected in 1980 on the spot of the gallows, where many lives were taken. Now, one blogger said that it feels scary just hearing the words, but nowadays Ikebukuro became a lively and popular place for travelers to visit. But at nighttime, it's a place where lots of young people go together. There are some ghost stories and unnatural phenomena that are still handed down by people's stories. It is said that a fireball and a male ghost wearing military uniforms can often be seen in Higashi Ikebukuro Central Park, in the same area that the stone monument is located. And sometimes people can hear strange sounds that sound like something falling, something loud, in the area where the gallows was. And when people turn to look, they don't see anything there. It is said that is the sound of a criminal being cut off the gallows and their body falling to the ground. That blogger thinks maybe there can be ghosts in that area after all. Now, on Reddit, one Reddit user named FreakoutBazaar 2 years ago wrote, "I live relatively close to this building. It's a relatively old building with long windowless hallways, so it does have a pretty good potential for ghost stories." And they also added, fun fact, most properties with a dark history, prisons, cemeteries, disaster-struck areas, etc., are bought up by major builders because homes won't sell there. So whenever there is a large building, you can often find an interesting history behind the ground that it lies on. It of course seems that prisons with their dark histories are always hotbeds for paranormal activity. When you watch shows like Ghost Hunters or The Ghost Files, one of my personal favorites on YouTube, I just love Ryan and Shane, you hear lots about ghostly activity on those sites. Now, since the Sunshine 60 building is on the site of a former and rather notorious prison, it makes sense that there'd be a lot of negative energy there. Now, I'm curious to know, what do you all think? Do you think that this sounds like a legitimate haunted place? I know that many of our listeners are based in Japan. Have you guys ever been to the Sunshine 60 building? Now, I visited the infamous Bic camera store in Osaka, the one discussed in episode 1 of the Supernatural Japan podcast. Now, on several occasions I've been there since recording the podcast, and I didn't experience anything out of the ordinary. Mind you, I was visiting during the day, during business hours. Maybe things would be different after dark. I've also visited and mildly investigated the Bank of China Towers, the most haunted skyscraper in Shenzhen, China. And it was kind of the same thing. I visited there during the day, and since it was 2021, at that time during China's COVID restrictions, I wasn't able to really see very much of the complex. I didn't see anything mysterious, but again, I wasn't there at night. What are your thoughts on the Sunshine 60 building? Do you think it deserves its reputation as being the most haunted skyscraper in Asia? Would you be willing to go and check it out? Well, if you were, this is how you can get there. And this is from TripAdvisor. Sunshine City is in Ikebukuro, one of Tokyo's main transport hubs, easily accessible by train from most other major downtown areas. Ikebukuro Station is a major station in northern Tokyo that is part of the JR Yamanote line. The JR Sankyo line also runs through Ikebukuro Station, as do the Marunouchi, Yurakucho, and Fukutoshin subway lines. Wow, that was really hard for me for some reason. Along with private railways such as the Seibu Ikebukuro line in the Tobu Railways. Sunshine City is about an 8-minute walk from Ikebukuro Station. Underground, where the station's exits are found, there are many signs pointing you towards Sunshine City. Exit 35 is the nearest exit. If you're using the Yurakucho line, get off at Higashi Ikebukuro Station, from where it is about a 3-minute walk to Sunshine City. In future episodes of the Supernatural Japan podcast, I definitely want to cover some of the more obscure, bizarre, and off-the-wall topics. But there are also the well-known places and stories I'll share as well. Although the Sunshine 60 building doesn't strike much fear into my heart, it's a famous landmark and a well-known haunting in Tokyo. It's definitely a topic for this podcast. Well, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Supernatural Japan podcast. I appreciate each and every one of you. So please take the time to share this podcast and help us grow. Join the new Facebook page and follow us on Instagram at Supernatural Japan. If you have any ideas, experiences, or stories you'd like to share, email me at supernaturaljapan@gmail.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter or X at MadFromApple. Well, that's it for this episode of the Supernatural Japan podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to download and listen. I really appreciate it. And we'll be back really soon with some more spooky topics from Japan.